Alright guys, this is the Ducati 1098, the Street Fighter. Now what makes the Street Fighter different? Well, a lot of things. Well, there's no fairings, right? So that's one thing. And differentiating it from the Superbike, let's do kind of a walk around for that first, because, okay, so you're missing the fairings. The bars are a little bit higher. They're about 2 inches higher, actually maybe about 4 inches higher than they are on the Superbike. This one does have a fly screen or a wind screen right here. Now that is an add-on, so they don't even normally come with that. That does help, keeps that wind from buckling underneath your helmet or, you know, making all that noise, and that's a really nice thing. Keep some of that wind off your chest too. Let's see. Okay, so there's some big differences here, because if you start looking at the wheels and you look right down here, there's no ABS, right? So no ABS ring. You don't have traction control. You don't have any of those nanny features you would have on the Superbikes. I know, go ahead and comment below and say what an a-hole I am for saying that, but really this bike is intended, you know, if it, I love analogies. So here's an analogy for, like, say, movies. If this bike were a movie, what would it be rated? It would be rated R, where even the Superbike would be rated like PG-13, because you can put traction control, you've got ABS, you got power mode, so you can tune down the power and actually it comes tuned down. You have to tune it up, but tune down that power so that you don't have too much power. On this bike, you have all the power all the time. You're intended to do your own braking, so there's, you know, you've got to modulate your brakes enough. You don't have the ABS, the luxury of that. You don't have the luxury of traction control. You get on the gas too much, you get on the gas too much. No wheelie controls. If you want to just pop a wheelie anytime you want to pop a wheelie, you can pop a wheelie. Alright, so those are some big differences. This bike does have the lightweight wheels on it. It does have the aftermarket exhaust, which is just, well, it's kind of the thing of beauty, and it sounds absolutely amazing. Alright, so you are also missing on this bike the catalytic converter, because that whole header pipe has been replaced as well. Dry clutch. And this one really does sound fantastic. So the dry clutch on this actually ends up making less noise when the clutch is out than when it's in. Interesting. Let's see, let's go around. So this one has a sergeant seat on it. That is really way more comfortable. Alright, so that's some differentiations between the Superbike. It's a fun bike to ride, and no doubt. Let's see, some other features this bike has on it. It has the sliders on it. It has the sliders up front. And let's see what else. Little tank pads. These are the grippers. So you know where your knees are coming down through here. The narrowest part of the bike. Pretty awesome. It just makes you feel like you can just lean down in the corners and just drag a knee. Of course, not with jeans on. That would be terrible. Fully adjustable front suspension, fully adjustable rear suspension. Actually, you can adjust the ride height in the rear as well. Massive brakes. The brakes in this thing are absolutely awesome. Some aftermarket mirrors just give you a little bit better view. Has the stock saddle in the back. If you want to bring a passenger, you still have your passenger pegs, which is kind of cool. If you guys can do me a favor, you've made it this far, please hit that subscribe button. It's right down there somewhere, and that helps me out. It gets my videos out there for more views, but it also, at some point, once you get like 500 subscribers, they put you on a whole different list. I only have, well, I'm not 500. You have to have 1,000. I think I have about 500. Thank you guys so much. I'm trying to get these things out as much as possible so I can do some reviews on some bikes, help people make more decisions on what they're thinking about buying. It's also, these bikes are usually available at my shop, but not for very long. So really the videos are more for, you know, you're looking at bikes and you're trying to make a decision. This bike compares with, say, like the KTM 1290 Duke. This is a 1098. And the 1098 motor from Ducati is probably the best, in my opinion. I think it's one of the best motors that they've ever made. It is just fantastic. Oh, I just noticed one other thing. This little slave cylinder here for the for that clutch. Makes that clutch just a little bit easier to pull in. It makes it buttery soft. Anyways, so yeah, usually by the time these videos are out, the bikes are sold anyways, but it does give people a chance to say, hey, I'm looking at this between the, let's say, I'd give a few bikes here in this category. One is a Triumph Speed Triple, the KTM's Duke 1290, of course the Ducati. There are a few others that are somewhat in this category. Suzuki makes a GSX S1000. Kawasaki makes a Z1000. But I think really if you're going to say the competing ones would probably be three. And that would be KTM's Super Duke, the Ducati Street Fighter, and the Triumph Speed Triple. And you guys can comment back if you think I should include something else there, because that's the ones I'm probably going to talk about when I'm riding this bike. And I can always cover the other ones when I'm riding one of the other ones. I need to do the review on my Super Duke. There's that sound. So let's listen to that. You can hear the motor when I pull in the clutch. You can hear the rattle now. When you let it out, you don't. And on some bikes, you hear the rattle when you let it out. Kind of interesting. So there's different design of clutches, but really like the sound of this one. Sounds really cool. There is one problem I have with this bike. I just tend to ride it too fast. It's so fun, and it just begs to be ridden pretty quickly. One of the things I will mention, so I'm skipping the parking lot part of this video on this bike, because if you're buying this motorcycle, you should not be a beginner. You shouldn't be a novice rider. You should overlook this bike. Just don't even, I mean, if you want to park it in your garage or put it in your living room, I can understand that, but if you are a beginner or novice rider, go somewhere else. This is not the bike for you. It'd be way too dangerous. And maybe I'll get into that a little bit. But so the parking lot thing is sort of out of the question. I think if you're looking at this bike, you already know how to ride really well. You know how well these bikes, do at slow speeds and all of that. Let's give it a little bit of a ride here. One of the things I talk about really is sort of the power delivery of this bike. And it is pretty aggressive. Even though this bike has been remapped, the slow speed, maybe there's no cars behind me, so I'm going to slow way down here. And if I go at idle, well, not just above idle, it like wants to go, it wants you to get on the gas. It's not super smooth at that low RPM. Then you give it a little bit of gas like that, and that front wheel just comes right off the ground. Of course, in first gear, that should probably happen. But it kind of makes you, the power band on this thing makes you just want to keep going through each gear and keep going through the power. It's just really, it's an awesome feeling. And it revs way farther out than you ever think it would. I'm always getting off the gas early on this bike because most Ducatis, they tend to not rev out quite as far as this 1098 motor. This 1098 motor really revs out. As I go through these corners, I'm kind of reminded of a few things. So one of them is that the reviews I look at on this bike, people say it's slow to steer. So that the steering is slow or heavy. And I would attribute that to a couple of things. One of them, they braked out the steering just a little bit so it's more stable at speed. But the second thing is you've got a really big steering damper on here. And so most of your steering is going to be counter steering into corners. And when you counter steer into corners, this thing flicks around like, it really turns fast. And it turns in and it leans just as far as you want to go. So I think it's just, once a rider gets on this bike, they go, oh, it's a little bit heavy, the steering's a little heavy. And it could feel that way compared to some other bikes. But 5 minutes later, that's gone, because you'll just be like, oh yeah, this thing really flicks around. It's very flickable bike. Very precise bike. Put it exactly where you want it, and it stays there. And it just wants to be leaned over. And the bike is so narrow, it makes you just want to get right into the corners. You know, it makes you want to just lean down there and put that knee on the ground. It really is just awesome. Really trying to hold myself back, because you really want to ride this bike fast. I mean, it just, what an amazing track day bike this would be. And the suspension on this bike has been set up professionally. It really works well. Really works fantastic, just fantastic. We'll take a little ride up here. Smooth transitions around corners. Doesn't get upset by bumps at all. The steering just stays right where you want it. I think it's nice that they changed the geometry of that steering a little bit. You know, for street use and some track days, you really want to have a great line and be able to hold it. Whereas once you get into pro level, you start getting into the featherweight wheels, and you start getting into much more steeper steering rake, and the bike wants to go anywhere. It doesn't really hold the line as much, but you know, a pro level rider, they will be able to control that with expertise. I love the way this bike holds the line through corners. You'll notice in one of my old videos, if you go back and look at the Speed Triple R, you'll notice one of my comments is that it doesn't hold the line very well, and they've got the really, really lightweight wheels in that bike, and compared to the Speed Triple and other bikes, it really doesn't hold the line, and it gets upset in corners when you have bumps. So you hit a bump and it wants to move around more than another bike. I'm not saying it dances all over the place, but you can tell the difference when you ride them back to back. If you don't ride these bikes back to back, it's really hard to do a real comparison. Let's look back down at this fly screen. You'll notice it's really, really small. Very tiny thing, but what it does, this little lip right here will bring that wind just up over the crest of the bottom of your helmet, cuts down on the wind noise quite a bit. Really nice. And I know that's taking it off my chest a little bit too. Not something I just immediately noticed, but I'm wearing more of a motocross style helmet because that's where my camera fits better on. And so with this, it would be unbelievably noisy if I didn't have that little lip there, and it was just missing. And then I'm not sure you can see just how narrow this bike is. It's hard to describe. I mean, it just feels like you could almost touch your knees together. It is so narrow, and that is so awesome. It's just a bike that makes you want to ride more aggressively. So if you've got sort of some issues with getting tickets because you can't control yourself on the road, this may not be the bike for you. There are other bikes that kind of can help you maintain a little bit more. This bike, it just really wants to be ridden fast. It's really always. It is just awesome. Anyways, we're going to go back down here and have a little bit more fun. seat, some of these bikes kind of lock you into position where you can tell I'm like way over and I can just pull the bike right into me. Really nice. I love it. Really nice bike, man. This has got to be one of my favorite bikes. I will say this bike over, because I want to do a little bit of comparison here, and if you compare it against, say, a Speed Triple R, the Speed Triples are a little bit more friendly. Oh, dude. That guy, I don't know why he pulled out and stopped in front of me other than that deer. Maybe he was just trying to make sure that I wasn't going too fast. At least I wasn't there. But, so the Speed Triple's one of the friendliest bikes out there. And when I talk about like bikes, we did the movie ratings. The Speed Triple is really a PG-13 bike. You know, it is a bike that has, you know, some friendly things, like it's got ABS, it's got a really smooth power band that doesn't have bursts of energy. It has what I'd call a linear power band. It just kind of gets progressively harder or stronger and stronger, and it's pretty easy to manage something like that as a novice rider even. I mean, in a leader bike, and they're smooth enough that a novice rider feels pretty comfortable on that bike. Okay, let's go into, like, say, the KTM Super Duke. Well, the KTM Super Duke is one of my R-rated movie lists. It's bone stock. Those bikes are a little, for a novice rider, unpredictable, a little scary, and can leave you scarred. Maybe like an R movie would, right? They have a jerky off of the KTM 1290 Super Duke. It's really leaned out on the low end of the throttle, so it gets a little jerky just around town and stuff. Now you can smooth that out with a new map, and they've got, even KTM sells a dongle that corrects that. But right out of the gate, it's a little bit unpredictable. And then it has a real pretty heavy power band, and so coming off power into corners, you could, as a novice rider, you could upset yourself. You could get yourself into some trouble. Kind of the same thing with this bike. So those kind of compare. I think if you're looking for a big naked bike and you're not the real experienced rider, Triumph Speed Triple, awesome. And also, Suzuki makes that GSX S1000. I bring that up because that bike has one of the smoothest linear power bands of any bike. If you look at my review, go back through, you can find a review on that bike, and you'll notice I ride that thing around in 6th gear, and it's never upset by it. I could pull off from a stop in fourth gear, and you just pull away normally, no big deal. The power band on these bikes, if you put this in 4th gear and tried to pull from the stop, you'd have to really rev it out or you'd stall it. It would not be happy at all. It probably wouldn't be happy in 2nd gear. I mean, you'd do it, no problem, but just saying. Alright, so let's that, and the Z1000. The Z1000 is another really kind of spectacular bike, but that's more on the R-rated list because they've set that bike up with no nanny controls. It's just all the power all the time. And it has a lot of power, and it really comes on strong in the higher RPM. So I can see you getting somewhat comfortable, and then all of a sudden, boom. All right, enough about those bikes. Back to this one. I've just been kind of putting along here, just cruising. And it does pretty well, but the whole time I'm sitting there going, okay, I want to go, I want to go, I want to go. The sound of these pipes, I'm hoping you can hear it, just sounds phenomenal. This bike has been remapped with these pipes in mind, so there's none of that, you know, lean, popping, none of that kind of stuff. It just sounds perfect. Hear that? Oh, just awesome. Yep, make friends with your neighbors first thing in the morning. Woo! And then, yeah, let's see, since we're talking about more of an advanced bike, you know, doing, this thing's a wheelie machine. It really does wheelies real easily. You know, first gear just comes right up. No problem at all. You can maintain the front wheel on the ground in second gear, you know, if you try and keep it down. With a little bit of a pull or a snappy throttle, the front end's just coming up. It's a fun bike. It's meant for fun. Long distances, the bars are still pretty far forward and pretty low. Not as low as a super bike, but if you're not used to, say, like a super bike, your wrist may need some getting used to if you're going to do a lot of long distance on this bike. But I think you could do it. It's comfortable enough, especially with the Sergeant seat. It really makes it super comfortable. I just can't get over the sound. You know, this bike just sounds so good. The bike looks amazing. Ducati does a great job in their paint, and this red paint is so deep red, it looks like it's still wet. This bike has 8,185 miles on it, so just getting broken in. Any other features? Really, there's no add-on features. This is the way I like a motorcycle. I like a motorcycle that doesn't have all those extra things. I don't want that big TFT movie display. I don't want, you know, all that extra stuff on my fun bike. I just want it to be raw, and this is raw. That's one of the reasons I bought the KTM. The KTM's really raw. It does have a lot of nanny controls, and so I bought all KTM's things to get rid of them. They've got dongles and such to turn that stuff off. But this one just comes like it, so it really tempts me to buy this bike and sell my KTM, because you don't have to worry about all that stuff. It's just the way I like it. You know, I don't have to go in and set my power modes. I don't have to change traction control. I don't have to change my ABS settings. I don't have to say, all right, well, let's see, how much ABS do I want? Well, there isn't any, so it doesn't really matter. And I'm just fine with that. I like it that way. It's better. To me, I'm not a beginner rider, so, you know, there's that. It's just a lot fewer things to worry about. I should mention on the transmission on this bike, the transmission is really, really smooth. It is, the gears just click in perfectly. I haven't found any false neutrals. You know, I slowly put up through every gear. It's just perfect. Excellent, excellent transmission. The shift points are really close together. It's not a long throw. Brakes are fantastic. The front brakes in this thing are so good. It might make you think that the rear brakes aren't all that great, but the rear brakes are good too. It's just the front brakes are just outstanding. It's got to be the brake pads are just, you know, a softer compound brake pad, because man, it's like overpowered brakes is the way I would use it. It just has all the power in the world with these brakes. Love it. There's that sound. And I'm shifting at like 7,000 RPM. I can shift at 12,000 RPM. This thing just really can scream. I love it. So you can hold it into corners a lot longer. This is why this would be a great track day bike as well, because, you know, if you're not an expert, you still can hold power through corners. And this is, I mean, of course, an expert bike, but for riding on the track, man, this bike would just be outstanding. every time I ride this bike, I think, gosh, I really should have put my leathers on, because you know, I really want to push it, and really can't push it when you don't have that equipment on. Bad me. Always, why am I riding around in jeans? That's a really dumb thing. I got my boots on, I got my leather jacket on, and I got jeans on. Well, maybe it slows me down a little bit. That's not a very good excuse, but hey. Yeah, that's one of my favorite bikes. I would need to do a top 10 list someday. One of the top 10 favorite bikes. Oh my god, I don't know if I could do it. But this could be in the top 2. I'm just not sure I'd maintain my driver's license. Sometimes I have to decide to get a bike that I could ride a little bit more, what do you call it? A little bit more, I don't know. A little, slower? Well, we'll try and ride slow. Something I'm working on. I tell you, another really big thing, we're going to take a look at this bike again one more time. We pull up to the shop, we'll take a look at what this thing looks like. But I'll tell you, everywhere I go to fill up gas, and even in quarantine, people are still walking up going, hey, what bike is that? That's pretty amazing. You know, they want to talk about the bike with their mask on, of course. Now, if you thought about this bike over, say, and you're kind of going between the sport bike and this bike, or, you know, the super bike and this bike, if you ride on the street, this is the bike for you. If you're racing, purely racing, then the sport bike, the super bike. But let's take a look at this thing again one more time, because this is the Ducati 1098. Boom!